Hey everybody, it's me, JJ Panzer, your smart apartment advisor with the Real Management Company. Good to see you back with another weekly client call. Today we'll talk a little bit about what's going on. I think the top item on my agenda is to talk about the election and Prop 21 and to encourage all of you to dig deep and help us with a last push of fundraising. I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I want to talk to Denise a little bit about AB 3088 and some things that we're seeing coming down the pike with some of our tenants who are, asking us for coverage under AB 3088, but it's not a situation that I would necessarily think would be a reasonable situation for that, and we'll talk about it a little bit. And we'll talk about, as we were talking just before we got started here, about the recent article that said that rents are down by 31% and why and what we're seeing and how that's going. So also Josh is out today. He's on vacation and he's dealing with some family stuff. So he will not be with us to give us the deal of the day or to talk about the sale market. But I'm definitely noticing that a lot of the deals that I see coming around are continuing to come around, and nobody seems to be interested in them, and prices are being adjusted accordingly, and it's a difficult time. Anyway, let me start with the election and Prop 21. If you have watched any sort of television or looked at a screen or seen any ads or anything like that, online or in the media, you notice that we have an awful lot of money flowing into this election, especially here in California, and Prop 21, our rental housing measure, is no exception. There's a lot of clutter. I heard that the kidney dialysis and the gig worker measures are expecting to have something like $100 million plus spent on either side of those issues, trying to get everybody convinced. And so as a result, it means we have to be ever more diligent in trying to get our funds raised and try to get our ads out there on the airwaves. You see some of the ads that the Yes on Prop 21 side are publishing. And our ads are, the campaign says, very effective at influencing people, but they need to be seen. And so, the original suggestion for fundraising was $100 a unit. And if you could dig deep and get onto their website, noonprop21.vote, and make another contribution. If you've made any money in this business over the last 10 years or more, or even 5 years, I would strongly recommend that you dig deep and try to give a contribution. Whatever you give goes straight to the advertising budget. This is a large campaign, and I was reassured by the campaign when I spoke with them on a call last week that the funds that they're raising now are not going to the campaign consultants and to the people who are creating the campaign. It's going straight to the advertising budget. And we are now 20 days away from the election. So it's critical to get as much money as we can into the campaign. And I really appreciate all of everybody's support in trying to get this going in the right direction. With that, I think I want to bring Denise in and just discuss a little bit more about AB 3088 and about the way that it seems we're having some conversations with our tenants, and as we, I think, expected, AB 3088 is leading to some situations where it feels like tenants are taking advantage of the situation. They may have been affected, but it's a little different. So let me bring Denise on, and I'll explain a scenario, and we'll talk about it a little bit. Hi, Denise. How are you? So
I'm very well, JJ. How are you?
Good, thank you. Very good, thank you.
Good.
So the situation, I actually just got an email about this from John, sort of laying it out for one of our clients. the situation that we have is a tenant who has had some changes in their employment as it results from COVID. And one partner lost their job, another partner switched jobs and made a little more money. In all circumstances, the partners together make less than the 130% of the area median income. This is in Alameda County. But their together income, one job and one unemployment, is now, it is more than 3 times the monthly rent, which is what we would expect them to qualify for. But at the same time, in most circumstances where we have tenants who apply and they're using unemployment benefits as a way of qualifying, they are not typically found to be qualified. But in this circumstance, the tenants are figuring out they only have to pay 25% rent for the next 5 months, and the rest of it is going to be essentially uncollectible without a small claims case. What are your thoughts about, gee, I don't want to pay my rent, and I know that I don't necessarily have to because my income is below 130% of AMI?
Well, first of all, you're only going to have enforcement issues if they don't agree to pay it back. So
Right.
let's assume that they're not going to pay it back, and
Right.
you have to proceed to small claims. I have to tell you that unfortunately, irrespective of your standard operating procedure, state law clearly indicates that if they are below the threshold in the county that they're living in, that they can take advantage of the protection. And
Right.
the reason they're doing that is because it's not just about rent, it's about other living expenses.
Right.
So they can at least the state of California can at least identify the rent. They can't identify how many kids there are, whether they're in private school, how they eat, how they live, gas, all that stuff. So that's
Right.
the reason they're doing it. So they'll
And
take
so,
advantage of it, and there's not much you can do about that.
right, because it's just the easiest thing for anybody to point to and say, this is a chunk of expense that we can show, and the landlord is just required. Now, in this circumstance, if they choose not to pay it, and we can then try to make a payment plan, is that if they decide they don't want to pay the other 75% for 5 months, it's small claims and that's it, huh?
No, I mean, you can absolutely make a payment plan.
Right.
You're going to small claims when they say they're not going to pay it.
Right.
So I would definitely say, look, I'm going to take you to small claims in February or March. I can't remember. I think it's March.
Yeah. First part of next year.
Right. Or would you like to be on a payment plan?
Right.
Right.
Right. And it's a, okay, well, if you can get it paid back in 6 months after the, starting in February,
Right.
you're paying, I don't know what 75% times 5, but works out to be 3.5 months rent, something like that, 4 months rent. And we'll pay that back in, you can pay an extra half a month's rent for 8 months or something. If you can agree to something like that and get them to, do you need it? I guess it would be good to have a written agreement. Do you need anything more than an email that just says, here's the schedule of your repayment?
Well, if you absolutely want them to commit to that, I would proceed to an agreement that you could enforce in court.
A formal written agreement.
Yeah, so much of it is really dependent upon what's the situation.
Right.
What's literally, how much money are we talking about? How far off? What are the opportunities for the tenant, or the reality? Will the tenant be able to pay that?
Right.
What is giving you any sort of comfort that they are going to commit and be able to satisfy the payment plan that you do reach? And if there's any question about it, maybe there's some other way around, some other security that you could request, etc. So, that's how it works. If you want to proceed to go to small claims, you will obtain a judgment, and that judgment will be good automatically for 10 years. It's a matter of just finding a person to levy upon. Over the course of time, people typically will require credit needs. And if there is a judgment, they may not be able to pay 100% of your judgment that you win in small claims, but then you can negotiate at that time and take less perhaps than the judgment allows. Or you can let it continue to accrue 10% interest per year and go that route as well. So
yeah. Now, are there other terms other than the strict repayment terms that you would put in a formal agreement with a payment plan with the tenant? Is this something we're bringing to you to write it up, or is it simply, these dates, each amount of money is due?
It depends on what the client wants to do.
Okay. Well, what are the options in terms of what might we want to do that would require a more complex payment agreement?
More money being owed. If
Oh, okay.
you have a $20,000 debt. I have a gentleman right now I'm dealing with. He's going to be owed over $100,000. So that's
one tenant.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's something that you're going to want to secure, right?
Wow.
So that's an example of, well, this is also previous back due rent that was
Sure.
pre-COVID, and it's been a long-term relationship. But that's an example of, okay, well, now COVID hit and it's even worse. And so,
Right.
and when we're at the point that we know we can accommodate a secured agreement, that's what we would do.
Yeah.
Secured payment plan. Would that mean the filing of small claims? Would that mean an actual breach of contract in San Francisco Superior? It's really dependent upon how much money is at stake and what is the intention of the tenant? Is the tenant, in graduate school and is going to make $100 million in the future? It's a pretty good risk. So that's something that you would perhaps want to be more serious about securing, as opposed to just pay me what you can and continue to live in my property.
Right. Well, that would certainly be the other end of that spectrum, but I'm thinking more along the lines of, these are the dates that you're going to pay. It's going to be the 15th of the month. You're going to pay regular rent starting February 1st or March 1st, your scheduled rent of X, and then you'll pay another 50% or 25% of a month's rent on the 15th of each month, or, whatever you can get people to agree to.
Right.
And when those payments don't arrive, then you can go. Now, do you have to, if you make a payment plan that takes you till the end of 2021 to collect, are you waiting until 2022 to go to small claims for the rest of the payment?
Well, how did you secure the payment plan, or did you? So that's a question for the owner. If you want to secure the payment plan, you bring a small claims action or San Francisco Superior Court action, and then you secure it with a stipulation whereby at the end of the day, if they don't pay, you will automatically obtain a judgment. And that
so you can do a similar sort of thing as you would do with a pay and stay on behavioral stipulation, but you can do that through small claims.
Well, in a different way.
You would
parlay the judgment, yeah.
So, but you can automatically get the judgment without necessarily having to appear at small claims court for a trial.
No. It's a decision being made by the owner. If you want to go to small claims and get a judgment, then you'll get the judgment.
Right.
And that's not a payment plan.
Right.
Unless the person wants to say, I will make a payment plan in exchange for you agreeing to ultimately not proceed on the judgment.
Okay.
If you want to go to San Francisco Superior Court and maintain the ability to keep that case open and have a secured agreement or enforce that the tenant must vacate at the end of the day, that would be the way to go. So do you want money? Do you want possession? There's so many different factors, and it's only as good as the signature. So if you don't have a great risk, you're going through all the machinations, and then that person's going to move out or lose their job again anyway. So There's so many different factors, it's impossible. There's all kinds of different ways to secure or not secure. Proof in the pudding. If they pay me, great. If they don't pay me, I'll chase it another way.
Okay.
So you can go to small claims at any time if somebody owes you money. It doesn't have to be in March. It can be in June. It can be July. It can be in November of next year.
Right. So, but as in my example, let's say someone owes you $5,000 by the end of February, and they make an agreement they're going to pay you 5 payments of $1,000 each month. They miss their first payment in March. Under normal circumstances with rent, I take them to Superior Court for an eviction case, and we either get what's that? Because you missed a payment of the back rent.
Because you
right. You're breaking up, so I didn't quite hear what you just were asking me.
So do you want the money or do you want possession?
Well, I thought possession was completely off the table.
Well, what if you have a payment plan?
Right. Is all of a sudden possession back on the table in this circumstance?
You're not suing for possession in March.
Right. You're suing for possession.
You're suing for a judgment.
Right.
And you get a judgment.
Yeah.
And what if they don't pay?
But I thought that you couldn't evict for COVID-related balances.
Right. So in April, when they don't pay rent, and it has nothing to do with COVID.
Right.
And you have a judgment.
Right. But I'm thinking they pay their April rent, but they don't make the payments on the payment plan.
Okay. Well,
you can't sue for possession in that circumstance.
Are they paying April rent because they can't make their payment on the payment plan?
I don't know. I'm
we
saying,
don't know, right? So that's an example of a scenario that, okay, well, if they can't make their rent, if they can't make their rent because they're having a payment plan, I better keep that judgment and keep it secured and not deal with the payment plan. At least I have a judgment.
Right. Yeah.
So that's an example of what's going on.
Right. What is the goal, and how do you accomplish that goal as best you possibly can?
Taking into consideration the factors that are being presented by the tenant.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's pretty complicated. Well, we'll have to keep those things in mind. I mean, for now, it seems like a lot of my clients are preferring to try to collect the money. A lot of the tenants that we're dealing with are not, significantly below market, and we'd rather they stay, and we don't have a bad relationship with them. And we'd like to continue that relationship. So, it seems like we're looking for, small claims if they fail to make payments, and a judgment in that circumstance, but not possession.
Right. And I don't mean to be so cagey, but I think that it can sort of morph over time too.
Right.
It's, you start out properly and then maybe they miss a payment. Well, you forgive it that month, but they're going to make it up in the future. And so everybody needs to remain as nimble as they have been over these past months.
Right. And each specific circumstance and each person's specific situation has to be reviewed over and over again. You can't pick a path in this circumstance and say today in October, it's October 14th or something. Hey, this is exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to be still wanting to do that in February.
Right.
February is a long time away.
Right. And the reality is so much of it is because the courts don't want you in their courtrooms. So it's forcing everybody to sort of meet and confer, and how are we going to deal with this to keep it out of the courtroom. So that's why they've undone the cap of $10,000 in small claims. They're hoping small claims will get a better judgment, and then people will appreciate the significance and the seriousness of repayment.
Yep. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. That's very helpful, and we'll just keep working with people that we can to do the best they can. And I think we have to be wary of people's promises, but at the same time, give them a chance to make and show us that they can continue to keep those promises. And so hopefully that gets us to a point that that actually maybe we'll be able to collect a significant portion of this by the middle of next year. That will be an interesting thing to discuss for 6 months from now. How much of these debts are we actually finding is even worth pursuing? So anyway, I think that brings me to one more topic of conversation that I have, and I'll open it up to everybody else as well. If people have specific questions they'd like to discuss or topics to throw out to the group. Antonio was mentioning, and a few other people had also mentioned to me that there was the article in the Chronicle, I think it was yesterday, saying that the rental market was down 31%. And I think it's a reflection of exactly what happens when you live in a city that 70% of the population are renters. And part of what happens when people are renting a home is that they're not permanent. And I think that's another reason why San Francisco has there's always people coming and going. I'm San Francisco born and raised, and my mother actually was born here as well. And Antonio's a San Francisco native, and anybody else who's on video can raise their hand and tell me if they're also a native. But Does everybody else have the same experience when something you tell somebody that you're a native, they go, "Wow, you're a unicorn." And it's because it's hard to live here. It's because it can be expensive to live here, but it's because it's also a very transient population. People come here, the same as it's been for 170 years. They come here to seek their fortune, and then they go somewhere else. And it's very easy when you're renting a home to give 30 days notice, move your crap out, and get out the door. Now, my downstairs neighbors are getting ready to sell their TIC in our 3-unit building, and I will be very interested to see how long it takes for them to sell their unit. But it's not always easy, and in a place like San Francisco, we lose sight of the fact that it isn't always easy, or that having owning your own home isn't easy. And so I think we all have to be patient. Hopefully everybody is, and I know you've heard me say this many times, hopefully everybody's well capitalized, and you're not relying on your rental income to support your family and to eat dinner every night and to put clothes on the family. But the fact of the matter is that you can't rush and insist on filling every unit right away, even under these circumstances. I have vacant units in buildings, and my clients, for the most part, are being pretty patient about it. Pricing online, pricing on Craigslist it doesn't seem to be dipping quite as bad as it seems they're indicating online. And I don't know, a lot of this is Zumper data, and so maybe they're getting actual closed unit deals. And I'm leaving my prices the way they are, and seeing if I can find a good qualified tenant who's interested and make a deal. But I'm not necessarily going to reduce prices wholesale. I'm certainly not inclined to cut all my prices by 30% because a newspaper article said that's what's happening in San Francisco. But this is I'm hoping. We've gotten some good news on COVID in the last few days, that our hospitalization rate is way down, and hopefully it stays that way. And I saw good news in the paper this morning that playgrounds are going to be open with some strict restrictions, and I miss going to the playground. I know my daughter does. She's going to be 6 at the end of the month, and man, she got back from her first day at kindergarten yesterday, and she was so excited she got to play on a jungle gym for 30 minutes or an hour for recess. So hopefully we'll get to go to Dolores Park and use her favorite playgrounds, and have a little bit more fun, and hopefully that keeps our progress with COVID remains stable, and things can start to improve a little bit, and maybe there will be a reason. Everybody who pulled up stakes and left San Francisco to go to the mountains, to go to Healdsburg, first of all, a lot of those people were our tenants that moved in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, and so their rents were pretty high anyway. And they will be, most of them, many of them, just as able to pull up stakes from where they are and come back. Or, we'll have kids graduating from college and going to graduate school and getting ready to come back. I mean, I don't think yes, our lives have changed, but I'm still not sure that there's going to be a time where people never have to go to the office. And as people become more successful with their careers and things, it's like, oh, well, you need to be here for this workshop. You need to be here for these meetings. You need to be here. Oh, we're going to take the clients out to dinner and all that kind of stuff. And then you find yourself driving, 90 minutes round trip each way. And, oh, well, now I'm going to pay $500 for a hotel room or something, for a couple of nights. Maybe I should just come back to the city. And so, I think that in the long run, the outlook is still good. San Francisco still has lots of the things that we love, and some of the things that drive us crazy. So it's not perfect, but we're going to keep working on it. And hopefully I don't have to come to you in 3 weeks and tell you that we lost Prop 21. That would be very disappointing. And that would certainly change our lives dramatically, especially here in San Francisco with our, the reality of long-term below market tenants. To have those units capped after those tenants leave on their own accord at a 15% rent increase is pretty difficult to imagine, hard to stomach. So let's come together and see if we can support the campaign. Definitely vote no on 21. Talk to your friends and family. Make sure they're voting no on 21 and get your ballots in as quickly as possible. I sent mine out over the weekend, and I just hope everybody stays healthy and happy, and that we have good things to talk about in a few weeks. I am going to take some time off next week, so I'm going to miss this call next week. I'll send out a note and let everybody know at the beginning of the week that we're going to skip a week. But I'll see you again in 2 weeks, and we'll talk again about all these things. Does anybody have questions or comments or ideas or other topics they want to discuss? If you can just, you can unmute yourself if you're interested, and let me know if you have them. Otherwise, I will be happy to say goodbye. Have a great weekend, everybody, a great rest of your week, and enjoy the warm weather here in San Francisco. And we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Thank you. Bye.
Everybody. Thanks, DJ.